I'm Umesh Pandya. I'm going to talk to you about a project called Wayfindr. It's one of ustwo's most recent joint ventures. I've been at ustwo for the last 5 years or so as the UX director, and I've also acquired this weird title as the CEO of Wayfindr, which still sounds a little weird of me kind of saying it. You can find me at some of this blurb here. If you're going to share anything, if I could kindly ask that you use hashtag Wayfindr, that would be really great so we can kind of track that. So I'm going to start with a brief intro to ustwo and then jump straight into the Wayfindr case study. Screw that. So, we're a digital product studio, and we conceive, design, and develop products and companies that make a measurable difference to the world. We have 4 studios. We're in London, Malmo, New York, and most recently Sydney. And we have a kind of a good mixture of kind of nationalities in the mix as well. This is our client work. Everyone has one of these slides. We do work for these guys. But some stuff that you guys might not know about is that we also do this. We do our own ventures. So we're fiercely independent. And because we are, we need to kind of look at how we might kind of, I don't like this word, but I'm going to use it, disrupt the traditional agency model. And kind of look at new kind of revenue streams to kind of keep us independent. Like, as we say there, the mothership is not for sale. We've done these sort of products before. How many of you know Monument Valley? Sweet. Cool. Dice? Yeah, he's got a T-shirt on there. Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you today about Wayfindr. So we do this thing at ustwo as well. It's called Invent Time. So this is where we kind of invest our time and effort to create products for good. And part of my role at ustwo is to shape and kind of look after this program of work and kind of see what projects we can kind of spin out of it. So ustwo is ustwo's dream and do tank. We allocate a percentage of our time and resources to investigate how we can improve or create new digital products that make a difference to people's lives. This is not done in a silo, but through deep collaboration with domain experts and validated with real users. And we kind of pull this ethos all the way through to kind of help us keep on track. So we're not just doing random R&D projects that don't kind of impact real people. So this is our kind of criteria. All the projects goes through this. So if something comes in or we're kind of speaking to people, we need to make sure, does it make a difference, first and foremost? Is there any personal development in it? This is quite important to us. So if you might be on kind of traditional kind of client projects where you might want to try some new skills, try some new methodologies, use some new technology, you might not be able to do that, but in Invent Time you can. And does it have any kind of business development opportunities? And this is quite important. Everyone else too gets an opportunity to do this, and we break people out kind of 6 weeks back to back. So we don't give you kind of like a 20% because we don't believe that works, because on that Friday you're just going to be on Facebook because you've had a mental 4-day week trying to do 5 days worth of work in 4 days. So we take you out, block you in 6 weeks, and then we kind of give you the opportunity to kind of work through that. A couple of projects that have come out of Invent Time. Most recently, we've had a product called Mood Notes come out. This was a joint venture between us and some clinical psychologists even, over in LA. We launched this app earlier this year. We followed this up with another project out of Invent Time called Keepsake. And Keepsake is a benchmarking kind of care recording tool to support those suffering with dementia. We did this in collaboration with City University and Nightingale Care Home. And within a kind of a 6-week period, we had a prototype working in locations with staff who were using that day to day, and we were kind of gathering feedback in that mode. This is not officially launched yet, so you're kind of first to hear about it, if you like. And there'll be some noise kind of following up. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is Wayfindr. So, as I mentioned before, Wayfindr is one of our kind of new ventures. And I'm going to tell you a story about how kind of a digital product studio came to set up a kind of a tech for good non-profit, and some of the tools, techniques, and methodologies that we used to kind of get us through this process. So why are we doing this? There are an estimated 285 million people living with sight loss worldwide. Sadly, the consequences of sight loss are all too often isolation, poverty, and depression. Of the estimated 2 million in the UK, almost half say they would like to leave their home more often. we also know this. So with the value of purple pound, so purple pound, you might have heard before, I think this lady referred to it as the grey pound for the kind of older customers. This purple pound is around kind of people, the spending power of people who are living with disabilities. So the power of that is 2.12 billion per year. And there's much incentive for businesses to do much more to secure the loyalties of these disabled customers. And this is kind of from the Business Disability Forum. So we know that if we try and get people out, this is kind of something that we can unlock. Also in early 2014, we came across this, which is the RLSB's Youth Manifesto. And this was put together by a bunch of, a group of young blind people to kind of articulate and communicate how the challenges they face kind of day-to-day living in London. So that's everything from transport to education to employment. And I read this quote, which was kind of quite influential on us when we kind of decided to take this project forward. And this is what the chief exec of the RLSB said. Vision impaired people are currently unable to travel in a reliable and consistent way. A bad journey means that they are late for work, job interviews, and impacts socialising with friends and family. This inability to travel independently has an economic, social, and psychological impact on the lives of young vision impaired people. Persistent bad experiences lead to a reticence to using public transport, and sadly, often isolation. So, together with the RLSB, we decided to do this. So we wanted to create an open standard, which is kind of for audio-based wayfinding, rather than just another navigation app out there in the market. And this was our vision. Wayfindr is the open standard for audio wayfinding that dissolves into digital navigation services and the built environment. Wayfindr helps create experiences that are consistent, seamless, and reliable. In turn, empowering vision impaired people to move independently through their environment, completing day-to-day tasks or exploring new places around the world. And this kind of breaks up into two kind of segments. So we have our users and we have our customers. So our users, as I identified earlier, is that people living with sight loss. It's pretty obvious. Now our customers kind of get a little bit more challenging here. So we've got developers of digital navigation services. So that's people like Citymapper, Google Maps, Blind Square. And we have venue owners and their accessibility stakeholders, so like Transport for London. You might think retailers such as Westfield and all that. So we kind of got a sandwich in between somewhere there. The specific things that you would get if you're kind of using Wayfindr, which I'll go into a little bit later, around if you're getting our guidelines or this open standard, you kind of have access to kind of structure of audio instructions. So this is kind of guidance on how to use the audio instructions, what's the syntax, how you might structure that out, and so that it can be consistent across many, many different platforms. You kind of get an interaction design guidelines. So this will help you kind of identify and help you guide you through to how you might implement it inside your product. So we can have a consistent kind of gesture base if we wanted to design that in. Context and relevance is really important. We'll kind of give guidance on how to specify your different environments and the different furniture you have in the environment. So if you're in the tube station, you might need to serve different things up to if you're in a retailer. Some things overlap, some things don't. So we can give that to designers and developers. And reassurance and orientation. Now this is the harder one for us. We're familiar with the other side. Trying to integrate into the built environment. So we're speaking with people, some of our partners, trying to understand how we can install and maintain a system such as this. So albeit having a great idea is brilliant, but if no one's going to put it in, we kind of would fail if we can't even provide this. And configuration and specification. So this is kind of, depending on the environment that we're putting it in, how would you configure something like this up to work alongside the experience that we want to create. So how do we create the open standard? This gets into a little bit more of the kind of designy stuff. So our approach is user-centered. We're a hypothesis-driven company. We have a startup mindset. Everyone's using this, but hey, it works. And we're iterative. So being user-centered, at the heart of everything we do, we're working with the vision impaired community. That comes right from the early kind of co-creation stages, right the way through to our product development. They're kind of there with us, not by proxy. We have the Youth Forum sitting with us every day when we try and work through this. We do simulation and observation. That's me wearing some type of kind of Tom Clancy glasses going on there to kind of help kind of simulate what the experience would be like. And you kind of get an idea what it might be like vaguely. You can do some observations which kind of help you, but this kind of helps you kind of get into what it might feel like. At the end of the day, we're kind of lucky we can just take them off and move on. So you can't really say, I was trying to build empathy, because it's really hard. We do interviews in context. We found this really useful when we, instead of trying to take someone into a room and give them an interview, we take them on the journey that they're going to take, or we take them into the area that they're going to do, and we kind of run and have these conversations with them whilst we're going along. Co-creation's a big thing. We have initial workshops. We do activities such as journey mapping together with the youth forum, and we kind of identify stuff around, what is all the stuff from leaving home to get into your destination, and what the vision impaired user was thinking, doing, and in this instance, what kind of Transport for London are kind of doing and thinking, and ultimately the technologies that the vision impaired person that we're using. So this helps us kind of identify where our opportunity is. So we're not just doing a blast out and say, okay, we're going to design this whole space. It's like, okay, where's the real impact with the effort that we've got? So another part of our approach, as I mentioned, we're hypothesis driven. So we have a hypothesis backlog, and these hypotheses get pushed into our user research. So when we go and have a live trial. So we've had a live trial in Pimlico Station, which was on the Underground earlier this year. We then moved on to testing on buses and road crossings around Pimlico. And then a couple of months back, Georgios over there, give us a wave. Yeah, we sent him out to Sydney Town Hall over in Australia to see how we can kind of validate some of our hypotheses and see how this can scale internationally as well. Just we need to have that proof point. Once it comes out of user research, we check whether the hypothesis is validated. If not, we'll reframe it, chuck it back in, and then when we have a next trial, we'll validate it again. We'll give it another go. If it is validated, it makes it out through to the open standard. And this is kind of what we do, like every day, day in, day out. So we're not kind of going off track. We're being really focused on what we're trying to get out there instead of going off track. And we're a small team, so we need to be focused. Startup mindset. You guys are probably very familiar with this. And the bits that we find out using every day, as a non-profit, we believe that using the lean methodologies out the lean startup as a non-profit it seems to align very well around kind of efficiencies and all that. So things we take out of this that I'm going to briefly talk to you a little about today is, ultimately the ability to learn quickly. So we test our products with users on a regular basis. When we're in trial mode, we're testing with the user, well, not a user, probably, 4 users every other day. So if we're doing a 3-week trial, we'll have them all lined up front, and that's quite important for us to get what we need. Prototyping, we found, is a great way to eliminate uncertainty. So we're doing kind of real-time updates as we're kind of moving along. And we get to kind of deliver value fast and make sure that we're on the right track. You'll be all familiar with this approach, which is kind of build, measure, and learn. And this cycle allows us to learn quickly. And we can also, where's the learn gone? There it is. We can allow us to move quickly through, and we can do this. So it's real users in real settings, making real-time iterations. And this is quite important to us. We have scenarios, which I'll come on to later, where we have our designers and our developers sitting on the platform whilst we, between user testing, kind of updating the prototypes, so that we can kind of just move it on that little nudge on further, because it's quite hard to get the time of vision impaired users, especially if we're taking them out of work as well. So what activities does Wayfindr do in the build phase? So we're going to get a bit granular here. So we do route planning and waypoints. So we define test routes for our participants at the stations based on the site visit and station plans. We identify the significant waypoints where users need to be instructed. We create a test script of the audio instructions. So we go in and do a first round and kind of have a look at what we might do based on previous learnings. We look at the installation of beacons. This is quite important. So we consider the beacon positioning and the orientation of these beacons. So it's quite This varies according to the type of technology we use, and I'll come onto that in a minute. We also test the turnaround time for beacon installation for nighttime staff. So because we work during the day, we have to give it to the nighttime staff at night. They've got to put it up, and then we've got to go back and go, oh, that was wrong. And then we've got to do that. We've got to kind of be quite kind of iterative in that. And by things like this, we realized that they might not work certain nights. To our horror, first time round we did it with user testing on the Friday. We turn up on the Friday morning thinking they would work Thursday night, and they don't work Thursday nights. So these are kind of things that we try and iron out right from the beginning. And finally, we develop our kind of prototype app. So we have a demonstration app that we use that we push through our validated parts of the standard, and then we can kind of keep on testing them as we kind of go through new trials. So in the measure phase, we do this. So we have validations with the users. So we interview users trying to understand their experience and their needs for navigation. It's pretty obvious. We invite users into the real settings. So if it's a train station or if it's a retail outlet, we do all these interviews and all that stuff in context. And we test with different participants. So these are all quite important. So I'll pick on the second one. It's a good example, which is you have different levels of vision impairment. We test with people who use guide dogs. We test with people who use the white cane. We test with people who might have kind of a short vision, but they can't see kind of any further out. We test with people with periphery vision. So we have to kind of account for all these variations, so that we can say that the standard is kind of holistic as it could be. It's really important. And so what have we learned? So we've learned this. So on the beacon side of things, placing beacons that run parallel to the direction of travel, and beacons that run perpendicular to across the direction of travel is quite important. The signal changes, and it's something that you can kind of use to design with. So what does that mean? So on an escalator, if we were to put it parallel, you kind of get a shape like this. So that allows you to get like a precise trigger. So we can kind of say the escalator's ending soon, and without any chance of you missing it. Now, if we put it perpendicular, you kind of get a wider and a shallower range, so we can kind of pick up kind of people going through ticket barriers. And now knowing how to design with this kind of, if you like, this invisible unknown, we can kind of start to tailor the experience and then start to make recommendations for people when they're installing it in retail, for example. Also, guess what? Less is more. Users' instincts and environmental stimuli are a big help for navigation. Users like short and concise instructions. Going back to the first point, there's an interesting story about that one where when we installed it, we thought, okay, yeah, this technology is going to save everyone. We're going to install it in. And we put the beacon down, beacons in, and the user made it through, and they got through to the end, and they completed the course. And then we went back and interviewed them saying, okay, how was this instruction? How was this instruction? There's a whole batch of instructions that they never got. And we're like, how did you get to the end? So this is all the instructions in the ticket hall. We found out that there were all the ones that kind of guide you towards a ticket barrier. As we dug a little deeper, like, how did you get there? They were like, well, we got there because we know what a ticket barrier sounds like. So like we just listened out for it. So at that stage, that was kind of a big moment for us to go, well, technology here in this instance, and I believe in most instances, should kind of support your human capacity rather than create a dependency on the technology. And that's something now that runs throughout on Wayfindr. So we kind of need to kind of appreciate that insight. Users don't like short and concise instructions. So we went in and thought, okay, we need to give you loads of information. Let's see how dense we could be with the quality of information we give you. And then we realized we needed to have a shortened version. So I'm going to play you a long instruction that we thought, and after speaking to them and testing with the beacons, and how shortened it needs to be.
Turn left and walk forwards to a staircase down to the main ticket hall. There are 9 steps.
It's pretty long.
Turn left and walk down the stairs. There are 9 steps.
So that's the kind of variance. So from the user perspective, this was easier to remember from a kind of a memory perspective. Also, just in a more practical way, the space between the beacons, by the time you finished listening to one and you're kind of approaching the other one's triggering off, it doesn't work in that way. So that was kind of a good learning that we had. Intermediate feedback is useful. So this feedback reassures users that they're on the right track. For example, you're halfway there. And the beeping sounds attract attention. So having a beeping sound before any instructions grabs the user's attention and alerts them to anything that's coming up. So it's like a noisy environment. So taking all these kind of learnings through, I've got a video here that'll quickly show kind of those points, kind of all in action in one clip.
You are halfway down to the ticket hall.
So here are some other points that we learned. It's not easy to communicate distance with meters. So users who are born blind don't have a notion of measured distance. So if you were to say walk forward for 1 meter or a certain measured distance, they don't have the notion of that. That goes the same for kind of saying walk diagonally. It kind of becomes a little tricky, so we have to kind of figure out how we might direct them around a space that they've never understood, if you like. TfL's terminology must be tested. So TfL call the things that we put the ticket through their gate line, but users call it the ticket barrier. So which one do we use and when do we use it? But there are commonalities that we can use, such as platform level. So because the vision impaired community use their lifts, they're kind of already familiar with this terminology, so we can bake that straight in. So ultimately, what does it feel like? So once the standard has been applied into an application, what does it feel like? So we use readily available off-the-shelf technology. So here we have a beacon. We've got bone conduction headphones. Bone conduction headphones are quite important in this scenario where we're not obscuring the kind of hearing that they already have, kind of helps you orientate inside the space. You can use it with normal headphones. We've seen users just keep one in and have one out. That also works. And a phone that has BLE, it was Bluetooth enabled. And that's kind of what we need. And we were quite conscious about trying to use off-the-shelf technology to keep the cost low for the end user. What happens is when you kind of get into bespoke kind of technologies, you've got expenses in manufacturing, tooling, and all that, and then because you've got limited run, it's so expensive that the end user can't even afford it. So it's like, okay, this is not helping anybody. So how might we kind of use what we already have in our pockets to make that difference? We've done it in, these are the trials that we've done to date. So Pimlico Station, London, Pimlico Multimodal, Town Hall Station in Sydney, and we've got a large trial coming up in London, which we should be able to announce in the next few days. If you were there in the Pimlico trial, so I'm going to show you a video of a Pimlico trial from top down, from the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey. There's no editing magic in here. This is the real deal. Hope you like it.
Here's how it works. The beacon broadcasts an ID, which is received by a smartphone. The smartphone decodes the beacon ID, and navigation instructions are spoken to the user.
Welcome to Pimlico Station. Follow the ramp down to the ticket hall. Turn left and walk down the stairs. There are 9 steps. Bear right and walk forwards to the ticket barrier. You are approaching the barrier. The down escalator is straight ahead. You are approaching the end of escalator. Walk forwards to the end of the hall. Turn left for trains to Walthamstow Central. Right for trains to Brixton.
Thank you. And this is the feedback we got. This is the stuff that keeps us going. From Courtney, we hear, it felt normal, it wasn't daunting at all. From Kevin, wow, that was literally like someone guiding you through the journey. Curtis over here says, I enjoyed the freedom and independence of navigating myself. Bradley here, would I use it? I definitely would. Sandy, the app gives a sense of reassurance and safety. And my favorite participant, Terry over here, that was amazing. I'm not joking, I couldn't have done it myself. Now this is a big challenge, right? So how do we get the scale and the impact that we need from like this small idea that we had and to like kind of get this mass global rollout, right, which we're going for? Well, we're lucky to have already signed up these guys. So we've got this thing called the Wayfindr Alliance. And the Wayfindr Alliance is where companies, groups, and non-profits come together to contribute and learn from the standard. So we kind of need this kind of neutral space, hence why we're a non-profit. We can't be competing in this space with others. We need to bring everyone together. Transport for London have signed up to kind of committed to kind of help enroll this out. Contact.io are a beacon manufacturer. They're pretty awesome. They're kind of helping us out with the tech side and kind of giving us a whole lot of, I guess, background knowledge as well in that tech space. Blind Square, which is an awesome app for vision impaired people. It's like Foursquare for blind people. It's really great to have them on board because it's kind of like, okay, we really believe in what you're doing. They've got a great user base. And Nominate Innovation, they've already kind of said stuff like, once the standard's out, we want to take it and use it in other contexts other than transport, and we're going to help you do that. We've got a few more which are kind of in the pipeline, and we're trying to line them up and stack them up. So we're kind of bringing those announcements soon. If you guys know anyone, if any of your clients you think are going to benefit from this, or if you can contribute to this, please get in touch. That would be really useful. So I'm going to leave you with this relevant but overused quote by the one and only William Gibson. And he says, the future is here, but not evenly distributed. But I'm on a personal mission to start evenly distributing technology. So let's make products that are inclusive and not exclusive. Thank you. Questions? Sure. Who's going first? Let's go.
How do you deal with complex decision points? So when you're underground and there are about 4 different tube lines going from the same place, how do you support navigation for that?
So we're looking at how you can select your journey before you get in. So at the moment, our trials are restricted to within the tube. So you get to the tube station, you say, okay, I want to get to wherever, and we'll guide you through. And what we do, we ignore the rest, right? So we don't give you all the other variants. We say, well, we know you need to get you there. So how do we ignore all the other beacons with all the instructions and we get you down? The vision would be that you're at home and you say, I want to go see Jill over in this pub, and then we do that seamless journey all the way through. So we can then switch between GPS to Bluetooth to whatnot, right? So we can interchange that way. Does that answer the question?
It does. Yeah.
Cool. I think there was one over there, sorry.
I was interested in timeframes. Do you include the finding of the original hypothesis within that 6 weeks that you mentioned, or is that when you have a hypothesis, do you start on a 6-week innovation program?
So we have trials stacked up back to back, and we have a hypothesis backlog, and it's just ongoing. Yeah, so it's, okay, so we've got this, we know that we need to validate these. Does this opportunity of this trial allow us to validate these? If it doesn't, then there's no point doing that trial, right? Because it's a waste of our time. Because we're kind of like really hypothesis driven because we need to get out there. It's like a team of 3 of us. Anyone else? Sorry.
In terms of scalability, if you're, say for instance, you're using the Bluetooth beacons in the underground and it needs to be very precise,
Mhm.
when users then go outside and they're trying to complete tasks like crossing the road, is that a situation where something like I don't know, 4G or something is not going to be good enough and you actually have to have beacons at either side of the road and that kind of thing? Is it scalable in that sense, or does it require a lot of infrastructural changes to make it happen?
So there's a couple of, I can unpack that in 2 ways. So there's on the crossing scenario, so when we did the crossing project, we used beacons. The challenge we had with that is beacons are really good when they're high up and stuck to a ceiling. Outside you don't have a ceiling, right? So what do you do there, right? So there is that kind of handoff between GPS and beacon or anything better that will bring you closer. GPS is just like somewhere here. So that is definitely a little bit more a challenge. What we do have to help us there is the built environment. So we know that we have kind of the what we call blister kind of paving. We're not replacing your cane, we're not replacing your dog. So we're kind of working with what you already have. So there's kind of there is like a handoff between that, but we don't want to have users who are kind of robotic going, oh, yeah, you're telling me go left, I'm going to go left. Now that just doesn't feel natural either. So.
Consider supplying more real-time information, like to more infrequent scenarios. So if your Oyster card didn't work at a gate, where the ticket staff might be.
Yes. So there's a mode in there which allows you to, even in a scenario of even if your Oyster card didn't work, you just get lost, right? What happens if I get off track? We can bring you back on track, but there's like kind of almost like a portable help point, if you like. So we designed an interaction where It wasn't easy to trigger because we don't want you to easy trigger and then station staff come and find you. So it's like a double tap type gesture, which brings people, will notify station staff based on your beacon location to come and help you out. An interesting case with the gate line bit, in kind of London, central London stations, usually you have station staff around the wide gate anyway, and that's the gates that they usually use, so they'll pick that up. But where Wayfindr really kicks in beneficial is when you're in stations where there's unmanned, right? So how do you kind of now unlock that? And that's kind of a value for a large transport network.
So what technology do the train staff have, or could the train staff have to pick up on the beacon position?
So we haven't unpacked that in deep, but it could just be, if it's a trigger, it could just be an email to the tablets that they'll use, right, or whatever system they have. We're looking, the bit that we're unpacking at the moment is in the maintenance bit is how do we let the maintenance staff know that a beacon's not triggering or not working. That's like once we've solved that challenge and we know that this can scale and operators and big infrastructure owners will accept this, then those kind of little nuances we can just knock all them out like pretty easy.
How flexible is this with respect to different kinds of beacons or different ways of determining location? Because of course at the moment there are Bluetooth beacons. I guess at some point some places may have other ways of determining position within a space.
Mm-hmm.
Is this standard able to accommodate those differences?
Yep. So we're aware of that you can use Wi-Fi for positioning. There's a thing called there's a thing called Li-Fi, which is Wi-Fi built into lighting components, so then you've pretty much got coverage everywhere. And then there's Bluetooth. So we started at Bluetooth because that's readily available. But the standard, we believe it will be a standard set of design patterns, if you like, if you want to call it that, which should be consistent across all of these. And then you'll have the technology recommendations. So when you've got the built infrastructure owners, you can go, well, okay, you've already got this in place. Well, if you've got this in place, then this instruction, if you're using beacons, needs to be triggered earlier rather than later. And so we can still keep the design as a core, but then as technology moves, the design patterns stay the same, if you like. Yes.
I would guess that the actual beacons right now work as activators for specific kind of messaging, so they don't actually hold the data, they just trigger the data that are there. Do you have an implementation of that actually allows to have active data, like for example arriving at the platform and knowing when the next train is about to depart, or for example if there is an issue with the station, like an emergency alert or anything like that?
I can say yes and no. So yeah, we are looking at that. We haven't announced that, but that is definitely a need. So yes, they do. They just trigger an action in the phone. But now that we know that you have pretty much most of the stations have Wi-Fi enabled, we can kind of start to merge these things and start give you real information. The interesting part with that is because it's just a trigger, we can then also that can scale to tourists, right? That can scale to the general public, and then you start to kind of get this real-time tracking and motion around stations. So if you know escalators close down here, don't go to this platform. Why don't we just split you off to this platform over here? These things become really interesting. Done? Thank you.